Hello and welcome back. In the last lesson, you were able to sign up for an interactive development environment with Cloud9, or if you chose to download and install Rails in your local environment, you were able to do so by using the help of an online service like installrails.com. So let's go ahead and sign in at this time to our Cloud9 environment. To do that, click on Sign In, and here, enter in the username or email address that you had used to sign up for your Cloud9 account. So I'm going to go ahead and enter my email. And then the password. And then click Sign In. It's going to load your dashboard, and on the left here is the workspace name that you had chosen when you had basically chosen to set up your Cloud9 account as a Ruby on Rails workspace. So if you go ahead and click on that and then click on Start Editing, here's your workspace. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and clear this up a little bit. Okay, so on the left here, you'll probably see this. This is your file structure, and for Cloud9, when you chose Ruby on Rails as your work environment, it basically created a default Rails application template for you. So that application is stored here, and you can navigate through the different parts of it by clicking on a directory and seeing the files. But we'll discuss that in more detail later on. On the bottom right here is a terminal window. Now we're going to use the command line here in the terminal window to issue commands like Rails specific commands or any other commands like running the Rails server or Git commands or pushing our code to repositories. But again, we'll get into more details on that later. And on the top right here is a text editor. So if I went into any file over here, it opens up in the text editor and we can edit it and save it over here. Okay, now there's a bit of setup that I like to do at this time. A near universal convention in Ruby is to have your tab indentation set to 2 spaces. The default configuration, if you look here at the bottom right of your text editor, you'll see spaces at 4, okay? And since Ruby and Rails uses a convention of 2, we're going to change this to 2. So to do that, you can click on this wheel-like widget over here. This loads your preferences. And then next to soft tabs, it shows 4 for you, most likely. Change that to 2, and it automatically takes effect. You don't have to hit save or anything at that time. And then you can close out of preferences. So at this time, I would like to go to the command line and issue a few commands to see what Rails version is loaded, what Ruby version is loaded, etc. So to check which Rails version is loaded, go ahead and type in Rails space -v. And we see that we have Rails 4.1.6 running. To see which Ruby version is loaded, go ahead and type in Ruby space -v. And we can see it's Ruby version 2.1.4. Now, the next thing we're going to check is what's called, we're going to check what Ruby versions we have installed in our machine. And we're going to do that by issuing this command called rvm list. And we can see these are the Ruby versions that are there, installed in this Cloud9 IDE environment. You're probably not going to see Ruby 2.1.5 because I installed that, and that's what I want to discuss next. So what is RVM? RVM is Ruby Version Manager, and it comes pre-installed with your Cloud9 account, and you can use RVM to download and manage different versions of Ruby. Why do we need different versions of Ruby? So any project you would be working on would have a specific version of Ruby that it's running. And it becomes difficult to go back and forth between the versions if you don't have a Ruby version manager like RVM installed. So if you're working locally, I would totally encourage you to get either RVM, or there's another service called rbenv, but I personally use RVM, and our Cloud9 environment comes with RVM, and there's no need to install anything at this point, so I'm just going to stick with RVM. To read up on RVM, you can go to rvm.io, and then if you click on basics over here, you can read some basic RVM commands. We won't use RVM too much. I wanted to show you what RVM was and what we can do with it. So basic thing we can do with RVM is we can install, let's say we want to install Ruby version 2.1.5. So you can do RVM install Ruby-2.1.5. And if I hit return at this time, it'll install Ruby 2.1.5, but I already have that installed. So how do I use a different version of Ruby? So to do that, go ahead and type in rvm use Ruby-2.1.5. And then you will see it saying using Ruby 2.1.5. To verify that, you can go Ruby space -v to see the version of Ruby that it's running. It's 2.1.5. Okay, so let's say we want to use Ruby 2.1.4 again. So again, we can type in rvm use Ruby-2.1.4. There you go. We're back to using 2.1.4. Okay. So next, I wanna talk about version control with Git. Okay. Now your Cloud9 environment comes with Git pre-installed. To check that it is pre-installed, go ahead and type in Git. I believe it's Git version. Okay, and then it shows Git version 1.9.1. Okay, so what is Git? Git is a version control system that works very well for Rails projects. It also works very well for any projects pretty much, but lots of Rails developers use Git because Git is also used by code repositories like GitHub and Heroku. So when you want to push code to a repository, let's say to GitHub, you'd be using Git. But at this time, we wanted to ensure that Git was installed, and it is. There are a couple of steps that we have to do when you first start using Git. So let's go ahead and take care of those. Just before I get to that, if you are working locally and you don't have Git installed in your machine, I would encourage you to go ahead and get Git on your machine. So just go to Google, type in Git, and it'll give you the link for it. If you click on it, you can download Git from here. You can go through some documentation. And if you want to learn more about version control with Git at this time, if you want to learn more, I pulled up YouTube and searched for Git version control, and a whole bunch of videos popped up. So I would just recommend going through one of them to get more familiar with Git and version control in general. Okay, so back to our configuration steps. Type in git config space -- global space user.name, and then your username within quotes. So if your name was John Smith, go ahead and do that, and hit enter or return. I already have mine set up, so I'm not going to do that. The next thing we want to do is set up the same thing, git space config space -- global user.email, and then enter in an email address that you control here. Let's say it is example.com within quotes, and then again hit return or enter. Okay. So what this will do is it will set these two configuration items for you with Git. Now, to see what we have done so far, go ahead and type in git config -- list. Oh, there's a typo there. So git config space -- list. All right, so we can see the username and the email that we have set up. Okay, great. And remember, you only have to do these two steps once. Okay. One last thing I want to cover in this lesson is to basically run our Rails server for the first time and boot up our Rails application. Now we have a very basic Rails template over here. We have done no coding, nothing at all. It came with our Cloud9 environment already, but just to make sure that it's up and running with no issues, we're gonna turn on the web server. Okay. To do that, you could type in the command to run the server from here, but I always like to have a new terminal window open and run the server from there, so we can continue working here while the server is running. So to open a new terminal window, click on this plus sign over here, and then a new terminal. Okay, and then if you're working locally, you can run the Rails server by typing in Rails space server like this. But again, you'd have to make sure you're in a directory of your Rails application. Right now we are in the directory, so it would so if you were in your Rails application already, then this would work. For our Cloud9 environment, this command would not work. There's a specific command that we're going to use. We can Rails server space -b space $ caps IP space -p dot space $ port. So the command again is Rails space server space -b space $ caps IP space -p space $ caps port. Okay, and then hit return. Okay, and so the server is running. Now, it says here that your code is running at this address. If you click here, it's going to open up a new tab here and show the server running here. We don't want to do that. We want to run this in a new tab. So go ahead and copy this. Go to a tab that you have open, or open a new tab, and then paste it. Then hit return. There you go. Our application is up and running. Now, we haven't done any coding, so this is the default page that comes with it. If you click on about your application's environment, you can see details like the Ruby version and then the Rails version that we have running. We have some links to documentation over here, and then it shows some other info like, the database, which is SQLite 3, which comes default with Rails, the environment, that's development. Okay, so to shut down the server, what you need to do is go back to the terminal window, click here, and then just go Control-C, and that shuts down the server. Okay, and we can close this out. Another option you have of running the server from your Cloud9 environment is over here on top. You can click on Run Project, but for this course, we're going to keep issuing the Rails server command so we get comfortable with it. Okay, so congratulations, you're up and running with your Rails application. To summarize what you've learned in this lesson so far, you have set up and explored your interactive development environment in the cloud. You have learned how to issue a couple of basic commands from your terminal window. You have learned how to download, change, and manage different Ruby versions using RVM. You have learned about version control with Git. You have started the Rails server and were able to see your Rails application running by viewing it through a browser window. And all of this while not writing one single line of code. In the next lesson, we'll get familiar with our Rails project, the directories, and the files, and start coding. So see you there.